Working along?
Hey, there's this meeting we're supposed to be having, and nothing's like happening.
Oh,
I don't hear anything. There's just a screen which says Board of Education Student Learning Achievement Meeting.
I'm not in it. That's good.
Okay.
I printed
I
off,
was trying to wrap up some stuff and get,
I printed off our POs for 003, and so I'm gonna start diving into those.
okay. So we'll see there is some revenue coming.
Hi, ladies.
How you doing?
Living the dream. Hey, so unmute yourself. I was hearing some feedback. Say something.
Say something.
So are you on the Zoom in 2 devices? Okay. I think that's what's causing the echo. So I'm trying to think, first make sure the other device is muted. I'm guessing they both are.
Try turning the volume all the way down on one too.
Okay, Kat, try turning the volume down all the way on one of them. And then unmute yourself and say something and see if that's better.
A tag team on the mute and unmute, but if you think it's easier to go off one screen, we
Right.
could do that.
Right now, mine's unmuted and low volume, so I don't think there's any more echo.
No, there's no more echo. You guys can both talk from one device because you're both in the same room, right?
Yeah.
So like,
Part, Jill.
But now I think it's fine. You don't hear anything, right?
Nope, it's good. Yep. Okay.
Well, if it comes back, we'll mute.
Just
and
go to this one.
That's fine.
Okay.
Look how your background's yellow and like washed out.
I know, that's weird.
What's up, Brad?
Well, I've been sitting right here in this seat all day from 8:45 until now, I had about a half hour off. So this is up right here.
Hey, Jill.
Hi there.
Hey, it's Mike. Was this starting at 6 or 6:30?
6:30, we just had the link for 6 so that we could get everything set up, but the public notice
Oh.
was for 6:30.
Okay, yeah, because I was gonna leave and go home and log in, so I'd be on camera, but since I was at the office and it was 6 o'clock kind of popped up, I said, oh, I better stay. So my name's there, but you can't see me.
Okay, no problem.
Okay. Dave. Hey, yeah, I thought it was at 6, so I'm logged in at work, so you can't see me on the screen.
Testing. Jill, can you hear me?
Yes. I can hear you.
All right, there we go.
Hi, Matt.
Hi, Jill. How's it going?
Hanging in there.
There you go. Hey, everybody. Yes, I'm missing barbers now. Yeah.
Did you say you're missing barbers?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yes, that is what I'm missing. I am missing people to cut my hair.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
I had my sister cut my hair in her garage the other day.
Good move.
Looks very nice, Mr. Barboza. It looks very nice.
Thank you. I'll let my stylist know.
Yeah, Megan, do you want to come say hi to Mr. Barboza? Okay, Megan wants to come say hello. You have to look right here. Oh, hi. Hi.
Are you working out hard? I saw videos of you doing that last week.
Yeah.
All right, well, keep it up.
She's been doing, Colton and Megan, they hooked up a sled. And so Ryan was having them push a sled with weights and then pull it back. So those were some of the workouts. And
It was
then,
impressive.
yeah, she also, she's been practicing her juggling. So she was able to, she's the third or fourth highest juggler right now in her club. So she's been going to town with her juggling, which
Very
is
nice.
nice. Yes, a lot of videoing here, a lot of videoing.
Tammy's been working on her juggling too. And it's amazing when they start to get it, just how their confidence, increases and they can just take off.
No, juggling was a thing nowadays.
Oh, say that again, Brad.
I didn't know juggling was a thing now. I mean, there's a juggling club, and Jill, your daughter's juggling too.
Yeah, for her soccer team. Mm-hmm.
Wow. Awesome.
I was on mute. How's everybody doing?
Pretty good, Steve.
Good.
Hey, Steve, how are you? Sorry. I
Good.
was
Yeah, good. How are you doing?
good. I got kicked out for a second there, so I'm back. Technology is not always my friend. I'm sorry, Jeff. I know you're listening to this, but and I think I've pretty much given up on the whole positioning of my camera so it doesn't look like I'm either 80 years old or in a cave. And so now you're looking at my chin. There's a couple of them now from eating so much, and I think everybody's just gonna have to deal with it.
Yeah.
That's the reality of our situation.
Sometimes I lean in as if it's going to help me hear better.
Or see better?
Or see better. Yeah.
Hello.
Oh,
Daphne?
hey, Daphne.
Hello.
Hi, Daphne.
Hi.
So we have about a minute left, and then I think we can get started.
I had to sift through all of the emails to find the right one for today's meeting. I'm like, oh, got it. Oh, nope, that's policy. Oh, nope, that's a special one.
There's definitely been several.
I think that shows how busy we've been. Okay, so it is 6:30. I think I see Jen and I see Kat. Jill, is it okay if I open up the meeting?
Absolutely.
Okay, sounds good. Everybody else good? Okay, so it is 6:30 on April the 28th. Welcome to the April Student Learning and Achievement Committee meeting. For attendance purposes, I would just like to recognize the board members who are in attendance for this meeting. Burl Piccolantonio, Matt Campbell, and Daphne Mooring. I do believe that Brian did not think he was going to be able to attend this evening, but he was going to try to jump in later if he could. Just a couple things. This is our first Student Learning and Achievement Committee meeting virtually. So I thought we could just, thanks to the help of Jill and her team, I think we have some ground rules we can go over. This is probably one of the most active committees. Sorry, Matt, I know policy is crazy exciting, but this is probably one of the most active committees we have with respect to public participation. And I really appreciate the hard work that the board and the administration has done in order to enable us to continue to have this kind of meeting with this level of active participation. But to that end, I think the virtual environment does make it a little bit challenging. And so we would just ask a couple things. First of all, we welcome all of you. And if you are on the phone or you are here live with your face, we would ask that you mute if you're not speaking, and that will enable us to just help with any background noise or anything that's going on your end so that we can hear the rest of the people that are having conversations and doing presentations. There is also, for those of you participating that are not board members, there is a chat function. If you go to the bottom of your Zoom screen, you'll see chat. If you click on that, and both myself and somebody from the administration will be monitoring that. We absolutely welcome public participation and questions. And what we would like to try tonight is, if you would like to ask a question or you have a comment about something that's being presented or something that you didn't feel was covered and you have a question, we ask that you put your name in the chat box, and then we will go ahead and call on you and you can ask that question and make that comment. And Jill and Kat and Jen are already prepared to pause periodically with their presentation so that we can see if anybody has a question or wants to make a comment. We will also make that same opportunity available for people who are on the phone. I know that can be sometimes difficult to not know if you're not watching where there might be a pause. So periodically, Jill or Kat or Jen will pause their presentation and make sure that first, we do not have anybody in the chat box that wants to speak. And then second, make sure there's nobody on the phone that wants to speak or has a question. So it might be a little challenging. This is the first time I think we've done that to this extent. We have a lot of people on the line in the Zoom meeting. So it's just something that I think we're gonna have to manage. Feel free to, if you feel like you haven't been heard, please know also that I see, aside from Kat and Jen, Superintendent Barrett, Jill Elliott, obviously I've mentioned, I also see Principal Williams. And so we're all available, as well as board members, to answer any additional questions if you don't feel like you had an opportunity to either comment or speak tonight in this unusual circumstance. So just, I guess, to set the background for the meeting, student learning and achievement, we cover many topics throughout the year, and athletics is always one of the funnest topics and one that brings in good crowds and great opinions. We're so very proud of our students who participate in athletics at all levels, and certainly our parents who support them along the way, and families. We have a presentation prepared based on input that we've received previously from residents, citizens, teachers, and also as a follow-up to the last time we've talked about this topic a year ago in student learning and achievement. So it is prepared based on that information. If you feel like there's something that we missed or we didn't cover, we certainly welcome you to ask that question or make that comment. We may not be able to address it in this meeting if we weren't prepared to discuss it, but it doesn't mean that either another meeting wouldn't be scheduled, or somebody from the administration or the grade athletic department won't be able to get back to you and give you some input to that question or comment. Also, just for reference, we also have fees, school fees, as an agenda item on this agenda. We will be talking about all fees and athletic fees. And so it is going to be a longer conversation and something that's a little bit more comprehensive. So we ask that you just have patience as we go through all of that as well. There's 2 items on the agenda. So with that being said, I'd like to first start by recognizing Kat and Jen, both really in the first year of their roles here. Kat serving as the interim athletic director, and Jen serving as the middle school athletic director. And personally, I can tell you that from whether it's administrators or parents, have heard nothing but wonderful things about the hard work that both of you have been doing. And we appreciate you being here tonight. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jill and Kat and Jen and let them take it away. And we will be monitoring this group chat and trying to see if we can get some great public engagement going on here. So I'm going to mute at this point.
Okay, thanks, Jen. So thank you all for joining us this evening. Happy that we have some high numbers here on the Zoom call, as well as through YouTube Live. So a little background, it's been a couple months since we've had a Student Learning and Achievement Committee meeting, so we're excited to be back. It was way back in August of 2018 when we first had athletics on our discussion board. And we had planned to hear an update for these topics in August of 2019. However, as Jen said, both Jen Henley and Kat Harris were new in their positions, so we made some adjustments to allow them some time to transition into their new roles. Now we know the athletics program you know, in any district is an integral part of the school community and the student experience. And that when well done, it can really be an amazingly enriching experience for student athletes and really just the whole school community. So we also know athletics is a topic many people are very passionate about. And so we're looking forward to some of the dialogue and discussion we have tonight. Some of you might know, but I happen to be a Gahanna graduate. And during my younger years, I played volleyball and basketball at the high school. And I have so many fond memories. As I look back on those experiences, I really believe that they helped me be who I am today. And so even back then, I was truly proud to be a Gahanna-Lincoln high school athlete and to represent the school. And that's certainly the experience, you know, we want all of our student athletes to have. So at this time, I'm going to pass it off to our athletic directors, Catherine Harris and Jen Henley, and they're going to start by sharing all things athletics. And so at this time, ladies, you can share your screen and we'll get going.
All right, let me get everything pulled up here. All right. Thank you again, everyone, for joining us. I'm Catherine Harris, the athletic director at the high school. And to echo Jill, being a former student athlete here at Gahanna-Lincoln, I definitely look back on those memories, and there were experiences that I never took for granted. And I just look back on them, and they make me super happy to be where I am now. So I'd like to jump in our presentation here and really start with our mission, which is to aspire to provide a high quality experience where student athletes learn lifelong lessons that have value beyond the competition arena. And below we have some goals listed, but I really want to focus on the third goal, which is to define and promote pride with our student athletes. And pride is our mantra at the high school that is shared with our students and our staff. Pride is purpose, respect, integrity, diversity, and excellence. And with our student athletes being leaders in the building, pride is something we want to continue to instill in them. Let's take a look. Here is an overview of our 27 varsity sports that we offer through the fall, winter, and spring. As you can see the note at the bottom with winter, we are going to look at exploring the options of girls wrestling. It is up and coming and becoming super popular across the state, and OHSAA, the Ohio High School Athletic Association, is looking into this. And if you're familiar with Olentangy area, Olentangy Orange High School has a very prominent girls wrestling club and program, and I would love to dive into how they got started and try to, you know, hopefully bring that to the high school level. From the middle school, we did have a handful of female wrestlers, and they're going to be coming to us next year. And our head wrestling coach, Mike Flusci, and his staff are super excited to bring them into the program and help build girls wrestling and hopefully bring it here officially to the high school. Here's some numbers across the board from 17-18 in the blue, and then in the red, 18-19, and then green currently for the 19-20 school year, our roster numbers across the board for the fall at the high school. And this is combining freshman, JV, and varsity all together. So not too many discrepancies here. We're dipping a little bit in football, but that is something we're seeing across the league and statewide. But overall, pretty steady fall roster numbers. And kind of looking at that same data for the winter, you can see the dip with wrestling from 17-18 to 18-19. And we've experienced some coaching retention issues there. And we've had to start over pretty much the last 3 out of 4 years with a new coach. And so we're hopeful to create a more consistent program with our coaching staff to make those numbers increase and keep them steady. And then we'll look at the same thing again for the spring. Pretty steady across the board, a large jump in boys track and field, which is awesome. But for the most part, we've had a little bit of increase with the spring, just with lacrosse being official and trying to grow that program. But for the most part, things have stayed pretty steady for the spring sports. And then we'll jump over to the middle school.
So our numbers are similar to the high school charts as far as coloring the 17, 18 years in blue, last year was 18, 19 in red, and this year 19, 20. The biggest thing to know, I think we've been pretty steady the past 3 years. We do have a little bit of a jump in the spring, and I attribute that to the addition of boys and girls lacrosse coming on as a full sport at that middle school level.
With the athletic department, our major focus is the experience, and that's the experience for our coaches, our student athletes, and their parents. So this year, I did something called a SWOT analysis with our coaches, which is looking at the strengths, the weaknesses, the opportunities, and the threats of the athletic department from the coach's perspective, and was able to gather some feedback. And with that, I want to create a coaches focus group, which will be a mixture of veteran coaches and rookie coaches to really look at that data, hone in on it, and see how we can improve. Next year, we have a two-part system in place, with our goal being to gather feedback from parents and student athletes after their season to see how their experience was. And so we will send out a Google survey through Final Forms, which is a database that we use to communicate with student athletes and their parents. Here is an example of what that will look like. It's a Google survey, and they'll be able to rank from strongly disagree to agree for a couple different items, such as I worked hard this season, I felt a sense of belonging on the team, my coach communicated with me throughout the season, practices were organized and effective, my coach motivated me to do my best, and just a couple different items that we'll send out. And you'll see something similar for the parents as well that we can also send out through Final Forms. And this more targets information about the coaching staff. So about communication, the coaching staff was respectful, coaching staff provided a safe environment, coaching staff enforces team rules and regulations. That way we can gauge feedback from the parents as well. We want to use that data that we gather to have honest conversations with our coaches about the data we receive from student athletes and parents. It's definitely something we can always improve on, and we'll have some really hard data to look at. In addition to the coaches, the SWOT analysis and the experience surveys, and with our coaches group, we are going to come up with a plan to look at this data more so we can improve overall. And we're going to use the 9-step PDSA improvement process, which I pulled up here for you. And that is to plan, do, study, and act. And so starting this summer, we want to plan to define the opportunities for improvement, analyze the causes, and develop theory. And then from the summer and throughout the year, we're going to implement that theory for improvement. And then we're going to use our survey results after the fall, winter, and spring and study those results together and continue to act on that and reflect for future plans, again, with our overall goal of improving the athletic department. Since we didn't have the student experience survey this year, I did put together a video with some clips of our current student athletes to share their experience so far.
Hi, my name is McCord Regular. I'm a junior and I swim and play volleyball. And what I enjoy most about being a student athlete here at Hamilton is that I get to learn a lot of those time management skills, because I obviously have to balance school and sports together, and also just learning like teamwork and how to work with other people that you may not have to work with normally. And it just gives me a really good opportunity to learn how to do that and get those skills for work out in the work world in real life. And then some of my goals for next year, I want to re-qualify for states for swimming, and then hopefully place top 3 there as well in the 100 breast. And then for volleyball, I just want to be an impact player on the team. Like I want to help my team go somewhere in the state tournament.
Hi, I'm Taylor Patterson. I'm a sophomore at GLHS and I'm on the girls varsity golf team. One of the things that I enjoy most about being a student athlete is the opportunity to be part of something more. I love getting involved at the school and having the opportunity to make my school proud, and really the friendships that you form on that team last forever. My goals for this year personally are to shoot lower, make second team OCC, and as a team, make it to districts.
My name is Juju Grubich, and I'm a 10th grader, and I play basketball, volleyball, and lacrosse. One thing that I like about being an athlete at GLHS is all the relationships that I've made with my teammates. And my goal for next year is to step into a leadership role as a junior.
Hi, I am Maxwell Cummings. I'm a freshman here at Gahanna Lincoln High School and play football and track. One thing I like about being a student athlete here at Gahanna Lincoln High School is that we have wonderful teachers and coaches that help you to be better on the field, as well as the classroom, as well as the outside world. One of my goals next year is to help Gahanna win a state championship in football, and another goal is to qualify for states in track and field. Go Lions.
Hello, my name is Elise Wonderland, and I'm a current junior, and I run cross country and track. What I like about being a student athlete is how busy I am, which is an aspect no one really likes, but it's helped me manage my time and learn my priorities, whether that's practicing or going to meets or even doing schoolwork, which is very important throughout high school. For my goals for next year, it's going to be my senior year, so I just want to have fun and grow as a runner, whether that's gain more confidence or grow as a competitor. And I just want to support my team as best as I can and other teams and be a role model for those who are younger than me.
Hi, my name is Elena Amer. I'm a freshman and I played varsity tennis this past season. I really liked being involved in a school sport because it just gave me so many opportunities to make new friends and talk to upperclassmen. Next year, I hope that we can do just as well as we did last year and we can do really good in the OCCs. And I hope I just have a lot of fun.
Hi, I'm Gabby Henderson. I'm currently a sophomore at Gahanna Lincoln High School. Next year, I will be junior. I play basketball and soccer. And what I really enjoyed about being a student athlete this year was meeting a whole bunch of different types of people. For next year, I hope to bring many more championships to Gahanna.
Hey, I'm Brendan Phillips. I'm a sophomore and I play hockey and baseball. Things I enjoy at Gahanna Lincoln High School for sports are probably building relationships and friendships with my teammates. And some goals for me for next year are getting to know those freshmen and also performing at the highest level.
My name is Reagan Reitz. I'm a sophomore and I'm a part of the swim team. My favorite part of being a GLHS student athlete is being able to see everyone on the team get the benefits from their hard work throughout the year. Next year, I want to continue to keep my head held high and work really, really hard in order to achieve the times that I'm going for by the end of next year.
Hi everyone, I'm Mylan Brown. I'm a junior and I play football. I would definitely say that the bonds I've made with my teammates is the most enjoyable part about being a student athlete. Your team becomes more like your family and it's just a one-of-a-kind experience. And number two, my biggest goal for next season is for us to make the playoffs. So to anyone seeing this, stay safe, stay healthy.
My name is Ryan Amer and I'm a junior and I run cross country and track. My favorite thing about being a student athlete is the amazing people that I've met by going to classes and competing with them. I've created some great friendships that way. My goals for next year are to improve my times and to become a bigger leader and help our teams do whatever we can to be successful.
So that is just a small clip from some of our current athletes, and we are excited to gather more information from them. It was really great to hear just their voices and seeing them during this tough time and how they reflect on building, relationships and friendships and just that sense of belonging when being a student athlete here at Gahanna Lincoln.
So this next slide talks about our communication processes at the middle school level at the 3 different schools. We have several different audiences. Obviously, the first one being our students. What's the best way to communicate with them, and what are we telling them? So, we do a lot of school announcements. If we are fortunate enough that where a coach has the ability to come in during their lunchtime or things of that nature for a sign-up period, where we would collect their email address, their parent information, a phone number, to talk to them about listen, this is starting, this is the information, we're gonna have a meeting, just to kind of gauge the interest and kind of get it going as we head into those seasons. We have our school announcements, our newsletters, there's Infinite Campus emails that go out. Arbiter does talk to our Gahanna Lincoln athletic website where the schedule's set for the community to see. That type of information we try to blast out as much as we can. I also update all the middle school calendars with our events. So if there's ever a change, sometimes it's quicker to get it on that than it is for the athletic website. For the athletic department to the community, we've looked at Twitter. It's not something we use a lot at the middle school level, but it's something that we're open to and seeing if that would be another method where we could reach people. Our student athletes, our parents, and our teams, obviously, we use the Final Forms, the team app, which we're been able to use as part of the high school athletic boosters. Those two areas cover our compliance paperwork, updates, just another method of communication where our coaches can reach our student athletes and our parents in a timely manner. But again, we're always looking for ways to improve that, open to suggestions. This is what we have going on right now. If a coach cannot make it to a school for an announcement, I personally go over to the lunches and do a sign-up sheet. Our administrators at the schools are great and also make those announcements. And if I can't be there, then they will stand in for myself or the coach to try to gauge interest. And we do that several times as we're leading up to the preseason.
So you'll see a similar layout here for the high school. We're very fortunate to have Lincoln Live with Mr. Lowry's students. They are amazing with the productions that they put on, and they're able to highlight our games and different contests, showing film, and helping provide us updates, provide our school with updates and things like that. We're able to submit, and they make the productions 3 times a week. So that has been a super help to us. Last year received a lot of feedback about our athletics website, just lacking updates and real-time information. I wanted to make that my mission this year to keep the website updated, to provide tournament information so people can easily buy tickets and things like that, letting them know what's going on in our world and then highlighting our kids. I'll just pull up our website real quick here for you to see. We've added a lot more photos this year. We've had amazing parents, Mrs. Amer, as well as our Dave Aldridge from Studio 187, sending us photos that we're able to put on our website. I put an article up this week. We were unable to have our last signing day. So I wanted to highlight the kids since they didn't get their own signing day, just where they're going and for what sport. So I felt terribly for them that they didn't get that cool moment, but I still wanted the community to know where their future is headed. So that's just a brief update on the website. And then we also use Twitter. We also use Twitter. I love using Twitter to be able to connect with people, giving live updates or scores from a contest. We have people reply back with, wanting updates. I think Twitter's been working really well for us. Our website does push to Twitter and Facebook as well if we do add any articles. And just to piggyback off of Jen, we use Final Forms to communicate with our student athletes, parents, and our teams. It's a great and easy way to communicate to the masses if there's a large schedule change or a meeting or things like that are upcoming. It's very easy to email blast everyone through Final Forms. Over the years, we've definitely had some issues with recruiting and retention, both with coaches and student athletes. At the high school level, especially with lacrosse and wrestling, I've mentioned wrestling earlier. In the past 4 years, we've had 3 different head coaches, and that's tough on our kids and tough on the program. And some of our coaches, we lose them because of practice times conflicting with their day job, family time, they're starting families or have kids and trying to balance those schedules. And then the coaching certification process. ODE does continue to add coaching certifications. Right now, about half of the ones that are required are free, and the other half, there is a price associated with that. And It's approximately $200 for a coach to be certified through ODE, which is all the requirements that we have in place. And then OHSAA, the Ohio High School Athletic Association, has recently put out a lot of publications about pressure from parents. And this is during contests, pressure from parents towards coaches and officials, and just really how some parents kind of cross that line with brutal behavior. And there's some coaches that just choose not to return to coach. However, we do have some solutions in place. Looking at our youth and feeder programs, there's been coaches at the youth level for many years, and could be a new opportunity for them to coach at the middle school or high school level, since they have so much experience with that sport and in the community. I had the privilege last year to speak to the new staff orientation in the summer, which was amazing, just to meet new people, but as well share about our athletic programs and any coaching vacancies that we had. And I did get really lucky and scored a varsity girls assistant coach. She was amazing right off the bat. She meshed with our program, our kids and coaches, and received a lot of feedback about her. But we're talking about retention, and she's leaving us. She's actually moving out of state with her fiance, and it's a tough loss to our program. But our head coach, Nick Ely's already reached out to some local colleges and actually met with the OSU women's soccer coach. And we do have some candidates lined up to fill that vacancy. And then we also want to use This Week News, their online option, to post any coaching vacancies that we do have at the middle school or high school level.
From the student athlete side of it, and most of this is from a middle school perspective, we see a lot of students who have a conflict with their club season and how that relates to the school sports schedule. Practice times can be challenging, and we're just landlocked on that one as far as from a facility standpoint. I think winter is probably the hardest season to accommodate when you have a wrestling team and then 4 basketball teams trying to use one space starting at 3:45. But we manage, we make the best of it. We have a rotation in place, and we try to do the best we can with that. Filling rosters in some sports is a little bit challenged. We have some combined sports because of some interest numbers being low. Obviously, we would like every school to have all of the sports and be independent, but sometimes that's not possible. And then that transition from middle school to high school, we're three feeder schools into one high school, so the opportunities to contribute to a team may not be as great as what they are at the middle school level, which falls in line with, participation is definitely where we're at with the middle school level. And as you filter up, sometimes that you have a smaller window to do that at the high school level, which kind of leads into the whole playing time piece at the high school and roster sizes and things of that nature. Some of the solutions, again, we kind of talked about this earlier about how we're promoting interest in different sports and how we go about doing that. High school coaches and their athletes, we really have built a bridge, I felt, this year in a lot of our sports and bringing down and you would see a lot of high school athletes at some middle school contests. The cross country Battle of Gahanna, I think the entire high school cross country team and all their coaches were there, and it was great support. It was a fun atmosphere, and I think you could pinpoint some event in each of our middle school sports where we kind of see that bridge being built and continuing to share those experiences. Kat and I have brainstormed the last couple of weeks about maybe having a middle school, high school athletic open house to kind of ease some of this anxiety for student athletes as they prepare to try to continue their career at the next level. That's a work in progress, but I think it's something that could be very beneficial for our middle school students moving forward. And it would connect coaches a little bit earlier to our teams and our athletes and just, again, build those bridges. And then the 9-step improvement process that Kat mentioned earlier is also on there as a solution.
So the past couple of years at the high school level, we've had a all coaches meeting, which includes all head coaches and assistant coaches. Last year, I did invite the middle school coaches to bring them in to talk about coaching certifications and things like that. And Jen and I have already worked on our plan for this year, which would be the first week of August. And we'll have both middle school and high school coaching staff brought into the high school in the auditorium to align our vision, our mission and values, go over the coaching certification process and dive into the handbook and relay our coaching expectations of being a positive role model and having strong and effective communication skills and things like that. We've also secured Lisa Kelly from the district to give a presentation on mental health and the policies and protocols surrounding that. As you know, our coaches work with the student athletes, after school hours. And if, the coaches notice something or the student, gives some information, our coaches will know what to do in that instance if there is any threat to the student, and we can, best serve them outside of school hours. So Lisa Kelly is going to share about that. And we'll have some social time so our middle school and high school coaches can connect. Our goal is for them to set up some time in the future to meet, to go over their vision for their programs that overlap, and how they can best connect and bridge some gaps going forward.
And then once we split up by level, we're going to talk about specific content that's related to middle school / high school. The handbook that we have in place that Kat and I are already starting to revise and align the middle school handbook with the high school handbook, so that it's again to help ease that transition as kids move forward, and making sure that both of us are all on the same page, saying the same thing to our coaches, and that the expectations don't change regardless of what level you're coaching. There's coaches gear, of course, because it's all about the gear, and people come in trying to get the gear, and then celebrates the success of what we've done in the past, and welcoming our new coaches that have joined us in moving forward.
I'm sorry, keep clicking the wrong button. We're very, very fortunate to be a one high school community. And with that, we draw large crowds for our home football games and home basketball games. And as an admin team, we kind of sat down and looked at our event management process and our strategies, our policies and things like that. Very fortunate this year to bring on my new assistant, Matt Gilmore. He comes to us from the collegiate level at Ohio University, and he's really brought a lot of insight to some of these event management policies. He's really the go-to guy with a lot of these events, and he does an amazing job. So I do appreciate everything he's brought to the table in that aspect. But looking at football games in the past, after the first half was over, we pretty much, our sellers go inside, and all the policies we were enforcing kind of went out the window, and people could kind of come and go at the second half, which just doesn't really create a safe environment for everyone. We want it to be family friendly and fun. And so with that, we actually kept a seller open this year at the north end. So after the second half, people can enter, and we can still enforce the no reentry policy after, if they decide to leave, kind of once you're out type thing. And then we would use the remaining staff and move them down to the south end to just create an exit only at the south end. If anybody was coming in on the south end, they could not. They would be directed to go to the north end and purchase a ticket. So that was really the biggest change we had. And Mrs. Williams sent out to the Gahanna families just our policy, especially the no backpacks with middle school and elementary school. They go to a friend's house after school, and then they plan to go to the game, and they bring their backpacks, and we just can't have that to, again, ensure the safety of everyone. And then kind of jumping into basketball, especially for the boys season, we had a very fun, successful season, which brought 3 sellout crowds to us with Reynoldsburg, Pickerington North, and Pickerington Central. We did unfortunately have an incident at the Reynoldsburg game that is not typically a game that we sell out. Pickerington Central, you can expect that, but we did end up selling out that game, and there was a fight in the lobby. That opened up our eyes. We never wanted that to happen again, and we sat down again as an admin team and talked about increasing our lobby presence, and we did create an event map coverage for everyone who's working, our admin team, campus security, game management staff, with positions inside the gym with specific duties. So on each side of the gym, and again, as well as in the lobby, so that we have campus security and a game manager with specific duties. The biggest thing here, especially with students, is keeping the lobby clear. If the game is going on and you're not getting a snack from the concession stand, you should be in the bleachers watching the game. that, can reduce the large crowds that are just mingling in the lobby and potentially maybe up to no good. But if you're getting a snack and eating, that's totally fine. But for some of our kids that like to just come and hang out, we kind of push them back into the gymnasium to watch the game.
So at the middle school level, I rotate between all 3 middle schools, not in one day, but by event. It's a schedule that we put out that I work with the 3 principals and their staff as far as having coverage. When I'm not at a home event, there will either be a principal or their assistant principal there. And then we're fortunate enough to have a game manager at every middle school for all home events. It's very reasonable to have 5 home events among the 3 middle schools on the same day. So there's a lot of moving pieces with this. And the game managers are critical at each of those schools. And we just work it out together as far as tickets and when to shut down and game workers and crowd management and things of that nature.
Had to unmute there. At the high school, we're super fortunate to be able to engage with the youth at the elementary and at the middle school level. It's just another way for us to connect with them and get them excited for playing at the next level. Currently, our high school coaches go down and visit the middle school, their games or their practices. Last year, lacrosse did something really cool. They set up their youth night at the high school, and they had a cookout and tailgate at the beginning of the varsity game, and then they got to participate in game activities, create the team tunnel and things like that. And then after the varsity game, there was a youth game either later that week, and then the high school staff or high school players and staff went to the middle school to watch their game, support them. So it was really cool to see the support on both sides, and just again helping bridge those gaps and make those connections. And another way we can engage the youth is through our summer camps. Most of our programs do run their own summer camp, which is another cool way to bring them to the high school, interact with the high school kids. And here is a just quick video from our girls basketball summer camp. Not sure what happened there. Sorry, just trying to get this back to where I was.
So one of the things, just to piggyback off of Kat and how we're bridging the middle school with the high school, I bet there's probably at least every sports season, there's an event that would reach out and recognize our middle school teams at either a halftime or a pregame ceremony. It's very common. You would see Coach Bailey walk in the halls at Middle School South, not to say anything, but just to kind of poke his head in and acknowledge the students and the coaches and say good job and keep it up and things of that nature. Coach Ward and Kat have helped us organize this coming fall. We're doing a 7th and 8th grade doubleheader, so to speak, home football game at the stadium under the lights to give those kids that type of experience at the high school level, at the high school facilities. Wrestling will have open mats and invite our kids to come and wrestle and learn from a different perspective. And I always reach out to these coaches as well when we have vacancies at the middle school level for their direction and guidance in moving our programs forward.
Not sure what is going on with this thing. My apologies. Here you'll see a breakdown of our championships from the conference level all the way to the state for last year and this year. I am certainly confident that we would have added a few more with the spring season, but unfortunately, with the circumstances, we were unable to do so. But I know we'll be back next year better than ever, ready to get some more championships. But for this year, definitely congratulations to the boys cross country team finishing 4th in the state. And then this past winter, our girls bowling team yet with another state championship title, which is extremely exciting. If you've never been to a district or state bowling tournament, I encourage you to attend. It is intense and it is a lot of fun and extremely competitive. I just am so proud of that group and they're ready to get back after it for next year. Ralph Young is someone who helped form the OCC, the league that we share with 32 other schools. He's a former Central District board member for Ohio High School, and they have an award in his honor based off conference OCC championships. And so in 18-19, we were the recipient, 2nd year in a row. And then over the past 6 years, we've won it 5 years. And to be honest, we were on track if we would have had our spring season to win it again. So we'll be ready. It's something our coaches and student athletes look forward to, kind of bragging rights per se throughout the league. So again, we're just excited and looking forward to next year. At the end of last year, we did start the student athlete leadership team, also known as SALT. And we started with a book study from Urban Meyer's Above the Line, which really dives into some leadership concepts and things what we wanted to instill in our athletes. I know it looks like a football book, but it's really not. It focuses on leadership. And we had a lot of open dialogue and discussion for kids to talk about experiences that they've had so far and how they can bring some of these leadership traits back to their team. Kids would take turns in groups and share. I'm not going to go through this, but just kind of showing, what they took away from different chapters and present to the group. And then they also led an activity for the group to participate in. At the end of in April, actually, we were supposed to host the Special Olympics basketball game. It was going to be something that SALT was going to put on. In the past, it's been a low-key event. We basically just let them come in and use the gym, but SALT really wanted to do it up big, decorate the gym, invite the community to support Gahanna Special Olympics, invite our coaches and our teams to come and watch. We wanted to decorate and have the cheerleaders and the mascot and the music to make it a really cool community event and partner with Gahanna Special Olympics. We're unable to do that this year, but next year we hope to be back on track. And with that being said, some feedback I got from the kids is that they want to do more service projects and be connected in the community. So if there's things that you think of throughout the year where we could help and be a helping hand and work with youth in the community, our kids would love to do it. And in working with Jen, we want to have our high school SALT members reach out to the middle school athletes, come and see them at school, try to connect with them, build those relationships, have a familiar face to help ease that transition. And then also bring as many kids as we can to the Ohio High School Student Leadership Conference. They have that annually at OSU's campus at the Student Union. Gahanna-Lincoln really plays an integral part in this conference because we actually send ambassadors to help run the conference. They go through a weekend training and they help put the conference on. And then we bring a busload of student athletes. And my goal hopefully next year is to bring 2 bus loads. They get to go there for the day, see campus, and then partake in activities and hear from different speakers. And it's a really fun event. And I think it's a great opportunity for our kids. And we're excited for next year. Are there any questions before, kick it off before I send it back to Jill? Is there any questions or comments?
Yeah, so I guess maybe at this point, what we can do is first is go to the board members. And I guess before we get started with some board questions, I just want to apologize. I was introducing the athletic team, and Matt Gilmore, I did not introduce you, and I apologize for that omission. So we're glad you're here with us tonight as well. And Kat, I appreciate you bringing that up and introducing to us all virtually through this meeting. I guess I want to open it up. Burl, I think that you had a question. Do you want to get us started from a board perspective?
Sure. And actually, my question, I think, is coming from several questions that I received from some parents, some middle school parents and some high school parents, but all kind of revolving around the same thing, which is how do we as a district make decisions about what sports are offered? And usually when the question comes up, it's in the context of middle school sports and thinking about, I guess, the congruence between the sports that we offer at the middle school and the sports that we offer at the high school, and it not always lining up. And I guess specifically the questions that I hear most often are about soccer at the middle school, and I think softball was the other sport that comes up most often. Was it baseball? Yes, it was baseball. Yeah, thank you.
I can certainly start on that. That's a great question, and that's something I have asked when I first started here, and I think that that's an ongoing process, part of my learning in becoming new to Gahanna. As far as middle school sports, I think a good trend to follow is to have some club status first, so we can maintain some interest and build that interest so that we have the numbers to support having that sport. And I think we also have to look at how that aligns with our conference as far as a scheduling standpoint. I can tell you that in middle school, there's 44 middle schools associated with our conference. 5 of them offer soccer. Club sports just seem to hold something over us with that. Whether it's right, wrong, or indifferent, it's just kind of where kids are right now. Not to say that that can't change. I think that's something to look at. But I think culturally, club soccer is very big, and to pull kids away from that and to go into the school section part of that is definitely where we would need to start. We do have softball, but baseball is also currently a club right now. We try to grow our softball numbers if that's the particular sport in question. We did combine this year to have, instead of 3 middle school teams, well, actually 6, 7th grade team and an 8th grade team in each middle school, we combined and had 4. So West and East were combined this year due to numbers. But I believe that there's some policies in place that we've been exploring recently and reviewing. And, I think that's a great point for us to circle back to and learn more about that process and see where our interest level is at that level with the kids.
And I guess I should have explained a little bit further. So the club response is usually the answer to that. And I guess the question kind of has to do with those students who aren't able to participate in club sports. So as an equity issue. And I know that's a little bit deeper, I guess, than the conversation that we were just having. But so I guess the question always comes up both from the issue of alignment between our middle school sports and our high school sports, but also as kind of an equity issue. So there are some students who either their families aren't able to participate in club sports, or they don't have the transportation to participate in all of the requirements that a club sport has. So it has come up in that context too.
I think it's a good point, especially for a meeting like this tonight, is to get a clearer direction as to where we want to go. We do not match every sport that high school has, for whether it's a facility issue or cost issue or things of that nature. We don't have bowling and we don't have swimming and some of the other sports that, in addition to baseball and soccer. I think that's definitely a point to circle back to and get more direction. And it is a conversation that Mr. Barrett and I have had, and Kat and I have discussed it as well, about what that process looks like. And then we also have to maintain that interest level to sustain the sport, or we're going to be flipping things constantly. But you're certainly right. We don't match exactly what the high school offers, and that does leave some kids out as far as honing their skills and an opportunity to grow in that sport.
Yeah, I guess maybe I would just offer as well, because I think that I was a part of this process based on some input that I received from residents when I was first elected to the board. And that was, at the time in the middle school, lacrosse was only a club activity. And, I really think between the organization, lacrosse organizations themselves, and also the work that the administration did with surveying and kind of garnering support, there was some real data, I think, that was driving the decision to move lacrosse from a club sport to an actual like school sponsored sport and activity. And maybe going back through that process, Jen and Steve Barrett, maybe that might be the right idea, is to kind of take a look at how that process evolved. It was 2 or 3 years ago now, but it was really comprehensive. I think looking at the costs, looking at the participation, and not really sure what the outcome would be, but there was a lot of engagement with the principals, the students, their parents, and some of the officials at the club levels who wanted to provide opportunities for kids who might want to play more, kids who weren't necessarily going to play at that level. So that might be a good starting point.
Okay.
I think Daphne, did you have a question?
I have, yes, I had a question, and then I have a thought related to the question that Burl shared, because if there are students playing club sports and there's students that can't, for whatever reason, play club, they then tend to not go out for a team because the mindset is that only club players are going to get the positions. So that is something that, as the communication, and your plan is nice, but somehow that concept has to be dispelled, that that's a requirement to go out for a team sport at Gahanna schools. And I don't, obviously it's probably on your radar, but that is public sentiment that I've heard from parents in the district. So if you can keep that in mind. My question is, how are student athletes selected for the SALT team?
Yeah, great question. It's actually open. We don't have a criteria based on GPA or varsity letters or anything like that. It's any member, any student athlete that wants to be a part of it can join. We've put it out through like announcements and final forms to get kind of parents on board. We created a Google Classroom to share what we've been doing, our agenda items, and just showing our progress. So it is open to any athlete. I would like to grow it though. So hopefully next year we can get some more numbers.
Okay. Matt, any questions from you?
How, regarding SALT, how long has that been around?
Just 1 year. We previously started it at the end of the spring last year and through April now. So just about a year.
And for those students who want to be involved in SALT, how are we coaching them on how best to balance their time?
It is can be an issue with our meeting times. We try to vary those from after school to in the morning to try to capture as many kids and it doesn't interfere with going to conditioning or practice. Our coaches are aware of the program and are letting kids miss a little bit of practice or split time to come to a meeting. But we've tried to vary the times. We even hosted some over the summer to capture as many kids as possible. We actually had a great turnout. Mrs. Williams was our keynote speaker, but that has been an issue that we've been working for, is because we're missing out on some kids who are in season. And if they're not in season, they're going to off-season training, and we're kind of missing them after school. So we've been looking at the option of early before school times, and even maybe some weekend things, especially with our community service projects. We hope to continue to grow.
All right, I have one more question, not regarding SALT, regarding coaches, especially at the middle school level. When you tend to fold in teams, one middle school with another, how does that affect your coaching retention?
You know, being this is my first go around, some of these combined teams work a little bit more set in place. The newest one obviously is football. The coaches that we have selected for middle school football both had to interview. They were previously coaching in Gahanna. It was opened up to everybody. Everybody had an equal opportunity. We certainly didn't want anybody who had previously coached in Gahanna with our middle school programs to be excluded in moving forward when this combination took place. And that's how that came about, if that answers your question.
Yeah, and I guess we won't really know, as far as if they re-interview next season, how the folding of teams or the combination of teams affected retention.
Right, and I think that's something that's a great marker to look at as we go through the season, and then see what that actually looks like the following season, and see if the trend is an increase in numbers or what that looks like for Gahanna.
Thank you.
Sure.
Okay, so I have a couple comments and questions. I guess we'll start with the questions. When we met the last time, which was August of 2018, a lot of the discussion was about soccer and some concerns with what was on the forms when, people kind of mentioning their clubs and what was on the forms. What, if you can remember, what changes and what was the follow-up, I think, after that meeting to address those issues? And do you feel like they've been addressed? Do you feel like there's still issues that are out there with the same concerns, not just maybe with soccer, but with other sports across the board, where you might have, different kids who play for different organizations or clubs, or not at all, and feeling like they have an unfair opportunity? And maybe this is kind of a piggyback of Burl's question and Daphne's comment, but how have you seen that process evolve, and how are you looking to continue to evolve it in the future?
Sure. With our previous athletic director, that was addressed specifically with the soccer programs, boys and girls, with that interest form, what items are on there, not trying to discriminate with anyone based on where they play and who they've played for, just completely unacceptable. We want kids all to have an equal opportunity to participate and try out. We know soccer is a very competitive program. This year we've had a new head coach in place, and he did an outstanding job, especially with the communication piece. When it came to tryouts, we know it's a sensitive time for everyone. We know we can't keep everyone, and it's hard. It's the toughest part of the job, is the tryout process. And we did not have any issues with that. They have individual meetings with each kid during the tryout process regarding their status on the team. So we didn't have that form with that part about club and who you play for. That was definitely removed. And again, just a totally different process in place with the new staff that we have, and just had a really overall successful season. I think the communication piece really improved from coaching staff to the parents, and we really didn't have many issues. We did have all of our 3 teams like we should this year, and I think overall it went really well.
Okay. My other question is, with the COVID-19 situation, how do you feel the district's response from an athletic standpoint has been, both with middle school coaches and their athletes and high school coaches and their athletes? Where are areas that you see might need improved? What do you think is going well? And how do you think, especially as this could continue or come back, or who knows, it's evolving by the week. Like, what are your thoughts on how this is all unfolding?
No doubt it is a tough time. And I think we're extremely fortunate to have a great administration in place that has responded really well to these uncertain times. It is not easy. And for kids, these are their moments that they're supposed to be making, these special memories. And to have, especially for a spring athlete or our wrestler who couldn't participate in the state meet, it's heartbreaking for them to not have that opportunity any longer, or for kids who were looking for that last effort maybe to get recruited, and to not have the season to do so is tough. But I am super grateful for the coaches that we have in place. They have been amazing to keep these kids engaged and motivated, and keeping them active by sending them individual workouts and having video conference calls, meeting with the captains and things like that. Again, all virtually. It's been really hard. And I think our coaches are doing a great job uplifting our kids, and our kids are doing a good job of uplifting each other. And, day by day, week by week, new things are unfolding, and it's a lot of the what ifs. What are we going to have a fall season? And, what is the summer going to look like? Are we going to be able to host our youth camps, continue on as normal with team camps and our overnight trips and things like that? And right now, everything is kind of up in the air, but day by day, we're communicating with coaches. I'm on the phone daily with coaches, just trying to help process some things about collecting our uniforms, and trying to get people their spirit packs and their picture orders and everything that we kind of had. Our winter teams, about half of them didn't get to have their banquet yet. And how are we going to continue to do that? If we can do it in the summer, that would be great, to still highlight success and give out the awards and all those fun things. So we're working through it. Again, I think our kids are super resilient, and they're tough, and they're going to bounce back from this. And we're ready to move forward, and we're just going to, be patient and just try our best to get through this together.
I appreciate that answer. I think maybe I've certainly seen at least in my house, and heard from others in the community, that most of the coaches are reaching out, and I think most of the teams are engaged. I would just encourage that that's being done across the board, right? And that everybody's engaging, and everybody's working with their kids to try to, some are doing a lot, and some aren't doing a whole lot at all, from what I understand. And it's kind of, again, across the board. Technology is an issue, and how to get the word out there is an issue. And so I think there's lots of hindrances, but I think just thinking about how we don't know how long the situation is going to be, we might need to come up with some guidance and some strategy for a long-term vision of how we do this. So I have maybe two comments, but then before I ask any other board members if they have a question, I'm going to butcher your name, and that's my dog. Lorena Popelka, she has a question that she'd like to ask.
Hi, I'm one of those parents that actually spoke with Daphne and with Beryl about club soccer. And I think I also emailed Jen and Kat as well at one point. I am just curious. I'm a librarian, so I'm also just curious about how many student athletes play soccer at the GLHS that actually have a history with club soccer. I'm wondering what the number of students are, like how many people get on the team that have that history with club soccer during tryouts, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, that's a great question. At least at the high school level, I mean, we can keep anywhere between usually around 40 and 50 kids. We can go back to the chart there that showed the roster numbers. Of that number, I would have to ask our coaches of who plays club soccer. Again, that's something we try to remove from the tryout information, to not have that be a variable with tryouts. But that's,
I'm wondering if that is a variable, you know what I'm saying? Because if you have that history with club soccer, you have that practice time with club soccer, and you can afford it, then that makes a difference.
No, I totally agree. The more experience that you have within a sport, that the better chance you have of making a competitive team. But I don't have that information, but I will definitely get with our coaches to get that if they have an estimate on how many kids in their program are in some club.
Okay, so I just want to give an opportunity. I don't see anybody else's name on the chat. Just want to give an opportunity for anybody that might be on the phone who cannot respond in the chat. If you have any questions or comments. Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and keep going. I do have just a couple comments. First of all, didn't know if I was gonna be able to pull it together after the video of the kids, because just watching all of those athletes talk about their experiences and then knowing that they can't have those experiences today. But I'm glad I was able to pull it together, and I'm gonna quit talking about it because I'm gonna start to cry again, but that was really awesome. I do think that, one of the things that I personally, as a board member, was critical of is the website. And I think that the website has grown leaps and bounds since last year. I think it's a lot easier to find information. It's a lot easier to find updates and communications about when schedules are and when games are. And one of the most frustrating things for me last year was when my 80-year-old neighbor came over to my house and asked what time the high school baseball playoff game was, because he was just an interested person in the community, with no grandkids playing, no family playing. He's just lived here for a long time, and he couldn't figure out where and how and when to get to that game. And so I think that there's been, and that was a year ago, and I think that there's been some major improvements. And so I do appreciate all of that work. I think we have to continue to make those improvements and somehow communicate this website out to more people, because I do think people automatically go to the main website. And so I think it still is a little bit buried in there and how to get there. I also want to say a positive comment on the Twitter. One of the things that I have also noticed and heard from lots of parents is how exciting it is to be logged on and get updates real time on what's happening with games. I know that several of us, even at the wonderful evening and fundraiser that the gala did, there was a game that some of us had to miss, and it was great to get those updates as the game was happening, as we were getting all fancied up to go raise money for the school. So appreciate all of that extra attention and work. That's definitely been appreciated. I think that it looks like we don't have any more comments or questions. We're also talking about athletic fees tonight, but that's part of the bigger fee discussion. So I'm going to turn it back over to Jill to have that discussion. For those of you that tuned in for athletic fee conversation, I know a couple of you have questions about that. Just hang in there, because we're going to get to that as a part of the greater discussion that we're having in presentation on overall fees. So I'll turn it back over to you now. Oh, go ahead, Daphne.
Jen, I was just going to add, I think if it hasn't come through for the board, participation of our students in athletics has such a good return. And so I think we would be remiss if we didn't say, how can we help you make the athletic program better? And if there's ever an opportunity, just your video of the students who didn't get to have their college announcements, I would love to share that with people, because that's a big deal. And so if there's ever an opportunity that we can help you, know that I value athletics. I think it makes much better employees later on. It was always a question I ask of people. Team sports have great value. So from that perspective, please know that we are here. I am here. We are here.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. And I appreciate your support. Seriously. Thank you.
So I just want to say thank you, Kat and Jen and Matt, for being here tonight. I thought the presentation was excellent. We're in a time right now where we see and feel every day that there's a higher purpose than just, competing in athletics and the goal of winning. We'd all love to go see a baseball game or a softball game right now. We would love to see a track meet. I know that, and I appreciate Kat and Jen that you work together to get things that coaches are doing with athletes in the closure that we have now. So I appreciated the slideshow you showed us of how coaches are reaching out and doing individual workouts, observing social distancing and all the things that we need to do to be safe. But it was great to get that document, because right now it's really important. You know, education, we talk about Abraham Maslow, who has the pyramid of what kids need, and the lowest part of it is the basic needs. And you know, right now we also talk about Benjamin Bloom, who, you know, teaches us about critical thinking and analysis and deep thinking. But right now, you know, it's as Jessica said to me one time, it's Maslow over Bloom's. You know, supporting athletes in their social, emotional things and the fear of this closure. So I just appreciate our coaches doing that. I appreciate you working with them to do that, because I think there's a lot of athletes out there who are engaged right now and chomping at the bit to compete again. But there's always a higher purpose than just competition and winning. And it's really about character. And it's why, Daphne, I think you ask people if they've competed, because you want somebody who's been, you know, in the thick of things, under pressure, and win or lose, they did their best. They tried hard. And so, you know, I know that's what I got out of athletics more than anything. So thanks for your presentation tonight. And I'm real proud of our athletes who spoke, and they're all going to be back, I think, next year. And so we can't wait to get back at it. I would love to hear a ball hit a bat right now. That would be fun. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I share those sentiments. I want to thank Catherine and Jen for not only the highlights, but also just the reflection and the openness to kind of recognize where we might have some weaknesses and be open to putting some things in place to make it better for our student athletes and our families. I also am really proud of how the two of you have kind of partnered and built a collaborative relationship, because, you know, we definitely know it's a K-12, you know, offering. And so that's really important. And just, you know, the time you put into learning the systems. And I have to say, that video was amazing, because I was listening very specifically to the goals that the students had set for themselves. And, you know, the things that they were saying really go far beyond winning, right? They're far beyond wins and losses, the goals that they had for themselves. So it was just really, really exciting to see it. So thank you very much.
Yeah. Thanks.
So we are going to transition into the back to athletics and talk about, you know, the pay to participate fees. So tonight we're going to have, you know, just a brief outline for our conversation. We are going to be talking about, you know, some historical look. I'm going to review some of the things we discussed the last time we were together. And then we're going to hone specifically in on 4 particular areas. We'll be looking at instructional fees and course fees. And then we also be looking at, actually, I'm sorry, 6. We've got graduation fees, freshman retreat fees, and then as well as pay to participate fees, both athletics and then club and enrichment activities. So in full transparency, when, you know, you start to prepare for something like this, you know, probably similar to the way Jen and Kat were thinking through things, you often, you know, uncover areas for improvement, and sometimes more questions come up than you have answers for. So definitely, as I am working through this, there are some things we're going to be putting in place to both use the data that we've kind of uncovered and also gather some more data to help make some informed decisions. I think ultimately we would love, and I've heard, you know, this in some shape or form from some board members, we would love to be able to reduce or eliminate, you know, the fees that we have in place in the district as much as possible. And so I'm hopeful that, you know, we'll take some baby steps, we'll get some more processes in place, and then, we'll get to a point where we'll be able to make some informed decisions about, those types of updates. We certainly want to keep equity at the forefront. We want to make sure that our students have equitable experiences in our buildings and our classrooms, that our teachers have equitable experiences as far as, what they're able to use in their classrooms to instruct our students. And then also in the student athlete experience, taking a look at equity there as well. So, we'll be talking through all of those things today. This first slide highlights, I think the last time we met, the board policies were stretched over maybe four slides. So I did my best to condense it, but wanted to keep it at the forefront that we do have two specific policies connected to this. The first one focused on instructional supplies, where the board's granted authority to assess fees to support, instructional materials that go above the basic curriculum. And then the second related to, authority with charging fees for extracurriculars for sports, co-curricular activities as well. And so as we, I'm not able to move along on my, sorry about that. Okay. So this next slide kind of gives us a historical look. I know the last time we looked at this, the board appreciated seeing just, how our fees came to be. So back into 1994 was the first notes we found regarding course fees, some already being in place, and the AP fees were already in place at the time as well. And then that's, where discussions began about implementing some additional student fees and extracurricular fees. And then it was in 95 where there was a resolution passed to enforce instructional fees specifically. And then a year later, the $25 instruction fee came into play. So, 15 years later, and this came after a failed levy in March of 2011, there were several approvals to kind of implement some additional fees. And so there was an increase in the instructional fee from 25 to 35. That's when our pay to participate fees came into play at the high school and middle school. We also implemented the $10 graduation fee. And, that's when the caps went into play as well. And we'll take a look at those caps a little bit later. So I think, when we're making decisions about decreases or eliminations, it's just always important to kind of to think about the historical component and kind of how we got to where we were, so that, as decisions are made, we certainly have to be thinking about, the economic impact of the district, the economic impact on families, what we have coming up as far as future, levies. And so I just think this historical piece is good for us to consider. So this next slide gives us a big picture view of the financial impact of student fees on our district. And we did take a look at these numbers last August. Mike Verlingo, our new treasurer, as well as his department, have worked really hard to kind of give some updated numbers. If you could see my desk, I have like pages and pages of reports and printouts of all, charges and, how fees come in. And so I really thank the treasurer's office for helping to update these numbers. This information was gathered, I can show you here, in a spreadsheet, and it kind of outlines all of our fees that come into play at all of the levels, our pay to participate fees broken down by sports at the middle school and high school. We also have, sub-tabs showing, class fees, club fees, athletic fees. And so all of this information was kind of pulled together into this slide to summarize, the impact on our budget. And Mike did create a little formula down here for us. Should we get to the point where we're ready to kind of really take a look at certain fees we might want to eliminate, and kind of what that impact would be. But overall, we had last year $947,382 assessed in fees. And then certainly we have, waived fees that come into play. We The voided fees, when I was looking into that, that's essentially fees that maybe were assessed and then maybe a student dropped a course or decided not to play. And so those fees come off. And ultimately, after those waivers and voids, that's $829,366 for that particular year. You can see the breakdown of collected versus uncollected. And certainly we always operate under the ideas that we're going to get to collect those fees eventually. When Mike was able to kind of help process the information, this did adjust slightly from last year's information, but it's approximately $3 million over the course of the 5-year forecast, and would have roughly a 0.37 mils impact on future levies. So just kind of the big picture impact. I will say, as I mentioned before, we definitely have the desire to find as many ways to decrease the additional fees that our families are incurring over their time in the district. Tonight, I'm going to talk specifically about, a couple fees that we'd like to eliminate. We're going to talk a little bit about in the pay to participate athletics, bucket, how we can make some adjustments to try and decrease all those additional expenses that families also incur. So these are going to kind of be our guiding questions as we work through these fee structures. And these are questions that came from our previous SLA meeting, as well as questions board members have kind of shared along the way. We are going to chunk our discussions. And so just an added note, last time we met, we did talk about some other fees that we aren't going to dive so specifically into tonight. Those are more incidental and optional types of fees, like lost library book fees, or fees that come with the optional technology protection plan. And so I will go ahead and move into some of our current fees. This outlines fees and the amount specifically for our instructional and course fees. We talked about the historical review that increased to $35. And so, that's been in place for the last 9 years. The course fees, AP, are specific to the fees aligned to assessments, the tests, the College Board tests. And then we have a range for some of our other courses, anywhere from $25 to $50 for our art courses. We do have the $20 engineering course fee, as well as our college and career readiness course for their portfolio has a $10 fee. And the language course range is specific to the workbooks for those particular courses. There is a note there at the bottom that, fees are waived or assistance is provided for students on the free and reduced lunch program, and certainly also for families with known hardships. So that really applies across the board for our fees. We really try to be responsive and support our families in need. And those families on the free and reduced lunch, or in the free and reduced lunch program, those fees are just automatically waived for them. So those don't show up and, cause uncomfortable feelings. If we take a look at the instructional fees and course fees specifically, and again, I'm going to kind of use that structure to work through the questions for each type of fee. But one of the questions is, how are those fees communicated? And so instructional fees and course fees are communicated in a variety of ways. I think, pretty consistently, we can see it's really just a base level of information. It comes out in newsletters and teacher letters, as well as our program of studies. Families are able to see an active fee in their Infinite Campus account. That's assuming they're getting in there and looking for that. But really, this is kind of one of those shortcomings we uncovered. We don't have a systematic reminder process. And that was one of the questions a board member had asked last time is, what does our reminder process look like? How do we, help families understand that they have those fees? So we did work, I did work with Pam, and we're going to be implementing a weekly reminder. That's something that can come automatically from Infinite Campus. We're also going to share the information about instructional fees during the enrollment process, just so families are aware of what to expect, over their time with us. And then Judy is also going to be working on getting some information on the district website to help outline what those fees are. As far as how course fees are collected, and really this is pretty consistent across the board for all of our fees, they're all assessed through Infinite Campus. They all can be paid electronically or by cash and check. And we do have families that utilize both. Oh, so sorry, I got logged out over here. That utilize both cash check or the electronic method for paying the various fees. When we take a look at how they're used, our instructional fees really are there to provide resources to classroom teachers that enhance learning experiences, that go above and beyond just like the basic level of instructional experience, as well as some of those consumable instructional items. We talked a little bit, or I talked a little bit with some building principals, and it ranges across the buildings, but there are some standard items. Part of our curriculum, teachers like to have a variety of Post-it notes that students can use when they're marking up their texts and things like that. So those are some of the consumable items that we like to offer, as well as the large Post-it chart paper for the anchor charts and things. But then teachers also will decide specific to their planned instruction what types of consumable items that they use. And I'll show in a little bit some of the way that money is allocated to teachers. Course fees then go to additional resources for special projects. Talked a little bit about our workbooks, and then the required AP testing. A good example that we we talk about is like we have a jewelry making course. Some of those specialty courses that have additional materials that are needed to make it the great offering that it is. So we had the question last time about how does the money make their way to the classrooms, and I shared a little bit about how they're used, but just so that you get a sense for how we kind of take the money in and then push it back out. I'm going to show you just a few spreadsheets. This one in particular is just an overall glance at how we break down our building budgets. And so you can see over here in column I that the building budget includes a $50 per pupil amount. And then at the high school, it's $70. And so technically in their building budget, they are getting more than what we bring in for those instructional fees, but that's a portion of that would be used for some of those consumable items and the materials that, enhance the instructional experience. So, some schools will get a magazine subscription that enhances, the reading workshop experience. This breaks down then, this is kind of our calculation for the building budgets, and you see in there the $50 per student. We also have other things that calculate in our overall building budgets. But then, we work together to kind of outline the amount of money that our classroom teachers get, our art teachers get, our music teachers get across the district. And last year was really the first year after we started having some of these fees conversations that we said, we really need to make sure we streamline this. We really need to be looking at what is it that the teachers need to be able to provide these equitable experiences. We definitely had, a wide range of amounts that were being allocated to teachers. Sometimes couple $100 differences. And so we really work to streamline the minimum allocations that go out. And certainly we know that, PTOs supplement, and that's something that we try to be mindful of, both in our building budget allocations. We provide additional money to our title buildings, as well as how we use Title I funds. And then the next spreadsheet that I was going to show, this is the spreadsheet that our Director of Curriculum, Tia Holloman, works with the curriculum team on. And this is just a sample of how we work to utilize some of those instructional dollars as well, and have items outlined that will make make the instruction more meaningful and visible for our kids. And so just an example of how we both allocate money at the district level as well as allocate money to the buildings so they can be making some of those independent decisions about how to use that money. So the question at the bottom about, what happens if instructional fees or course fees are not collected? So at this point in time, they accumulate over the years until graduation, and it looks different for different families. Sometimes it ends up being a forgiveness type of program, depending on the situation of the family. Sometimes our treasurer's office is really great about working out payment plans, but they do continue to accrue both from the instructional fee side and the course fee side for families. So these next two slides kind of provide some updates for how we've been working to get a better handle on what are those additional materials and consumable items. And so some of the updates this year, Tia worked with Jessica and Jason to bring over some of the high school instructional supply needs. Previously, really, it was only K-8 instructional supplies that ran through the curriculum office. And so, I partly think that's because that academic officer position is kind of housed in the high school. And so it's, it just kind of makes sense or made sense in the past, but we really wanted to be able to get a better handle on how the dollars are being spent so that we can, work on things like replacement cycles and make sure that, the materials being purchased align with our curriculum, align with our district goals. And so this kind of shows the curriculum budget and what is being managed instructional wise. And so beyond just the basic textbook piece, the workbooks, the paperback selections, our licenses, our manipulatives, digital resources. And I want to be clear that not all of the curriculum budget comes from instructional fees. Obviously, I shared that some of it goes out to the building as well as some that's covered in those enhancing materials from the curriculum department. Tia has already been working on some replacement cycle ideas. And so that's going to help us just with the planning when it's time for us to make some decisions about, how much we need to allocate and, if we're able to make some decreases to instructional fees. Just what does it look like in the big picture over the years, as well as just really continuing to analyze where decreases may be able to be made. I had visions last year after we talked of being able to come to this next meeting and say, let's go ahead and get rid of instructional fees, or let's go ahead and make a decrease back to $25. But I think, we need to continue to reflect on the budget with Mike in the new treasurer role. We need to continue to reflect on, the economic impact of the current COVID situation, what things look like for future levies, and then, analyze where we might be able to make those decreases. Course fees, we have made some adjustments here. One of the things that, we wanted to make sure we had was a pathway available to all students that would require no additional course fees. And so, when we took a look and went through the program of studies, that really required us to remove the Creative Concepts art fee so that we could make sure we have that guaranteed pathway that requires no additional funding. Then we took a look at, continuing to only assess course fees for our AP tests and required workbooks, foreign language workbooks, and then additional project materials for those specialty courses. And the last bullet just really, I think, is our next big step. We need to really have a review process for these course fees. And so I have talked with Jessica and Tia and Jason. We actually had a meeting several months ago just about this idea of a review process. And So we envision it, having some sort of a justification for the course fee, an outline of the materials to be purchased, and then taking a look at that cost per student, cost per course, so that we can really align the appropriate fees across the board.
Can I ask a question before you leave that slide? Will you remind me what the creative concept pathway is?
So I am actually probably going to ask Jason or Jessica or Tia to jump in. It's not an actual pathway. That is just one of the art courses. But in the requirements for graduation, we wanted to make sure there were a basic level of electives available that have no additional fees with it. Tia, Jason, Jessica, do any of you want to add to that?
Yeah, so our creative concepts art course is kind of like a survey. It's the intro to art course, where students get to experience all of the different, like sampling all of the different mediums for art. And so that one, because it is like that introductory course, we felt like that was a good one to be able to take the fee off, because you really don't need to have any artistic background to get into that course. That's the foundation.
So they also don't have consumable needs like the other art classes?
They would have some, not as much, because they sample in the different areas. So they spend some time with drawing, spend a little time with painting, spend a little time with 3D. So it wouldn't be as much. And that's just something that we would have to comp through the curriculum department budget.
Thanks, Tia. So the next portion, I think, is probably going to be, a pretty quick portion of the conversation, because it's specific to the freshman retreat fee and the graduation fee. These fees are communicated specifically to the particular classes of students, and then of course are visible in the My Payments Plus Infinite Campus portal. It's interesting, when I had a conversation with Jessica about, just follow up on the graduation fee and specifics. It's just kind of one of those things that gets assessed and kids pay it. And of course, they want to be able to walk across the stage. But when we started to really reflect on, essentially it brings in approximately $6,000, depending on the size of the graduating class. And then, reflecting on that contribution toward the cost of the graduation facility. And, that's just one that we really felt like we would like to eliminate and, get rid of. We want to provide an excellent graduation facility for our families, so that our students, aren't limited to a certain number of tickets, and, felt like this was one of those things that we could probably, reallocate some funds to cover. The freshman retreat fee is just a $5 fee. However, it's just one more thing that kids are going to their parents for money for. And so, this is an experience that our freshmen go off-site to, and it's lunch that's provided as a part of that experience. And so, that's one of the things that we really processed as well. Again, it brings in a nominal amount of money, and something that, just a part of that experience, we want to be able to provide that without additional costs. And so, as far as, what would happen when the fees weren't collected, ultimately kids were still able to go to the freshman retreat and participate, still receive lunch. And so, no real, consequence or punishment. For graduation, there was always that, overarching, you're unable to walk across the stage at graduation if you don't pay, but, I don't know of that ever happening. And so these were just two fees that we felt like, we could eliminate right away, and just provide, it's small relief, but it would be two less fees, that kids are going to their parents for. So that's graduation and freshman retreat fees. So as we transition into the next chunk, where we'll talk about pay to participate fees, This kind of outlines from the chart we had looked at our last SLA meeting, how our pay to participate fees are broken down. And we're going to talk first about our clubs and our other enrichment activities. You see the $25 per activity with a $50 cap. And, you know, this slide breaks down our club and enrichment activities into two kind of buckets. The first one, these are our activities in action with collected fees at this point in time. The high school program of studies has other activities listed as you know, activities that have applicable fees. But those ones down at the bottom are, you know, either not in action or we don't collect fees for them. So for instance, obviously we know the fall play happens, the spring musical typically happens. But for, you know, some reason, right, wrong, or indifferent, those happen to be two club activities or enrichment activities that we have not traditionally actually collected the fee for. When I dug into that a little bit more, it was communicated to me that it was always just kind of gray area as to, well, who really should be charged for it? Is it, you know, just you know, does the stage crew get charged? Do the ushers get charged? Is it just the students acting in the play? And so, you know, that happens to be one that we list as a club, having a club fee and an enrichment activity fee, but it's not one that we've been collecting for. And then there are some others like Science Olympiad that just isn't in play anymore. But this just kind of outlines the actual activities that we do currently collect fees for and that we are not collecting fees for. What I also noticed is that, you know, some of these activities and clubs are connected to courses. And so that's one of, that was a discussion we had last year specific to speech and debate. And so we took some time this year and looked at, so what, you know, speech and debate was kind of our guinea pig. What portion of that is connected to a course that we offer? And so we worked out a system, and the treasurer's office created an extra line item where the first 6 competitions for the speech and debate class are connected to the course. And so those are just automatically taken care of from the general fund. And then it's the additional competitions that they participate in where the fees come into play and start to go toward that experience. So I really think that that's something that we need to take some time doing for all of our clubs and activities, taking a look at how they're connected to courses, how the expenditures connect to experiences aligned to those courses. In some instances, you know, just reflecting on, are there course fees already that go with it? And really trying to come up with a better, you know, plan for how these fees should or should not be assessed in the district. Just taking a look at, you know, some of those specific questions, really they're, like I said, they're included in the program of studies and through the My Payments Plus portal. We talked specifically about how they are collected, all fees through Infinite Campus. But then if you take a look at the last bullet, you know, these are really fees used for the advisor's salary and benefits. And most, I don't want to say most, many of these are connected to addendum contracts that are a part of our collective bargaining agreement with teachers as well. And so some of those fees come in to offset some of those salaries and benefits, as well as the equipment and you know, additional information or entry fees for the competitions that they participate in. So, you know, a common trend is that the accountability for our fees is just, you know, inconsistently enforced. And certainly, you know, we never want our students to be harmed if, you know, their families can't pay, or, you know, in some instances, maybe don't know they're supposed to pay. But one of the things, you know, we want to continue looking at with all of our fees is just, while we would love to not have them, we do have them. And so we need to have a common system for how we're enforcing them. So that's something we'll talk a little bit about with the athletics program as well. This last bullet looks similar to the course fee piece. We really need to run an in-depth review process. We need to take a look at the cost associated with the clubs, the course connections, and then, be able to make some recommendations to better support the club and activity. And I think, like I said, that speech and debate piece was a good guinea pig for us on how to kind of process that and be able to support that activity. Okay, so next up is the pay to participate portion where we're going to talk about athletics. And I am going to ask Kat and Catherine to kind of jump back in and tag team. I know Catherine specifically has done a lot of research on the fees at the high school. Ultimately, we have uncovered, more questions in this area than we would like to see, but we definitely understand that we need to help clean up some processes and streamline some practices across our teams. So when you take a look at our pay to participate comparison data across the OCC, and Kat, certainly, chime in here if you have things to add about any conversations you all have had. But you can see our Gahanna-Lincoln fee right here. Comparatively, there are only a handful of other districts that are as high or higher than us. And it was interesting because when I was doing some research, I found an article way back from 2011 when these fees were initially implemented. And the current athletic director and superintendent had some quotes in the paper talking about how, our fees were pretty comparative to most of the other OCC districts. And I think at that time, there were only 4 districts that didn't have pay to participate fees. So certainly things change over the years, but ours really hasn't. And so that's something for us to continue looking at, and for, the board to maybe give some direction, if that's something, we want to take a look at adjusting for sure. Kat, no need to, but is there anything that you would like to add just about, conversations or information that's come from the Ohio Capitol Conference?
Nothing major. We just recently collected this data again for this school year to really gauge and see where everyone was at. The conversations that we've had so far, no one's really looking to adjust or change their fee structure anytime soon. But that's kind of just where we left it so far.
Excellent. So moving on to the next slide here. This kind of takes us through some of the general questions as well that we were taking a look at. There are a few different ways that the athletic pay to participate fees are communicated. And, Kat and Jen both, have shared that there's the athletic code of conduct that gets signed prior to tryouts, and that has the fee information in it. There are email communications that come from the athletic department. And then coaches will follow up with student athletes and families based on reports they get from the treasurer's office. I mentioned back in our instructional fee and course fee slide, the desire that we wanted to implement some weekly reminders. Jen was actually able to kind of pilot that at the middle school this year, and she had the weekly reminders that were sent out for middle school athletics and had some success with that. So I think that that's something that we can utilize at the high school level as well. Those fees are assessed through Infinite Campus. One of the things that Kat had shared, and Kat, I'm going to ask you to chime in here, when we're taking a look at student athletes participating or not participating if their fee hasn't been paid, sometimes there's an issue with the electronic payment. So Kat, do you want to talk a little bit about that piece?
Sure. When we do get reports with uncollected fees, we then reach out to the parents, and the coaches help kind of follow up with student athletes regarding the fees that need to be paid so that they can participate in contests. Those reports that we're getting are not real time. So if someone pays electronically with check or from their account on My Payments Plus, it is not real time. So even though that they paid it and I can go look, it's not going to necessarily reflect that. There's, I think, almost 7 to 10 days. I could be wrong, but that's where it was before for that to actually show up. So our real-time reports were actually causing us a little bit more of a headache to reach out to a parent to say that they haven't paid when in reality that they have. So we want to be able to try to help ease that. So we're not harping on parents, even though they already paid, to maybe have them send an email with the attachment of their receipt from My Payments Plus, so we can move forward and not have to constantly email them or remind them, even though they already paid the fee.
Yeah. Okay, so this outlines, and Kat has a couple slides that she'll go into more specific details about how athletic pay to participate fees are used. But, you know, it is coaching salaries and benefits, of course, equipment, officials. I was looking at, I did some calculating on the referee fees the other day, and, you know, based on the reports that were run from the treasurer's office, it was, you know, over $40,000 in fees that go toward our, you know, our refs for our various sports seasons. And then of, you know, several entry fees for the different sports, depending on, you know, invitationals they're a part of and or tournaments they enroll in, as well as the advertising and the communication. The last bullet here connects again to just the inconsistent accountability. We do have those lists. Kat and Jen both work specifically with coaches on those lists of unpaid fees, but we have found that there are some coaches that, you know, enforce the true pay to participate requirement, and then others that don't. And so that's one of the things we started looking at last year when this, you know, topic initially came up was, you know, we don't want to have fees, but at the same time we do. And so, you know, just having those conversations about what should it look like, what should the accountability look like. And so it's enforced, you know, loosely at times and a little more strictly in other instances. So that's something that, you know, we really need to kind of process with the board for sure, and you know, make sure we're moving forward on a pathway everyone feels good about. So this next slide talks more specifically about some of the, you know, some of the expenses. Kat, do you want to talk a little bit about this? And then I can click into your uniform cycle spreadsheet as well.
Sure. So with our budget, we do have two major accounts that we work with, just with the necessary equipment that we need to purchase for each sport. So it can function, protective gear, you know, things like football pads and helmets, game balls, our athletic training supplies we purchase each season, field paint, reconditioning of equipment, any necessary coaching supplies, as well as our end of season banquets and awards that we give out, like the Bill Withrow or 4-year varsity trophies that we purchase. And then we do have a gas budget for our athletic vans. And then we currently have a uniform cycle in place. This has kind of been passed down each year. And right now it's in place through 2027. And it really helps us budget each year for each sport who has a uniform cycle for home and away jerseys, so that we can properly allocate the funds each year.
So I'll just click in just so the board can kind of see how, you know, the system works, and taking a look at over the years what that replacement cycle looks like. And then Jen, I'm not sure, do you want to talk a little bit about, this is specific to the high school uniform ordering, but I know when we had conversations about the middle school uniforms, you know, that's always, I think, an interesting thing for people to hear and know about.
There currently isn't a uniform cycle. We sometimes are at the mercy of the high school cycle, which would allow us to give some uniforms that are still in decent shape to one of the middle schools. The sizing is sometimes an option, a problem. You know, so we're working on that. We're putting one in place and moving forward with inventory and budgeting and things of that nature. But it is a little bit of a challenge coming into it, but we're working to make it better.
Yeah, absolutely. I lived that as a middle school parent this year, just with, you know, my daughter playing middle school basketball for the first time. And we had some uniform issues at the beginning of the season for sure. So, along with the pay to participate fees, one of the things that was, brought to the forefront for us, and I think Jennifer really helped kind of create a clear picture for us, was the fact that, beyond the pay to participate fees, our families really are taxed with many other expenses throughout the sports season. And so Kat did a survey, and I'm gonna let her talk a little bit about it, and helped us really understand completely what it looks like for our families financially.
Yep. So I sent a survey out to all of our head coaches, and this was extremely eye-opening. Asked them questions about, team camps, just really other expenses per student athlete that families have to take care of in addition to the pay to participate fee. And again, like I said, it was very eye-opening to see sport specific what each team does when it comes to team meals, overnight trips, and different fundraisers. Gear and equipment, especially for sports with specialized equipment like golf, bowling, and hockey, or they're on the higher end of things where they pay up to maybe additionally $1,500 to participate in their sport. And again, that's on top of everything. Looking at even the overnight trips, a lot of teams will use some of the booster funds and things that they've raised. On the higher end, baseball, who does their annual spring break trip over a week, if they were going to fly with the team, it was $970 per athlete. If they chose to drive with their family, then it was lower, about $500. So airfare obviously was a high increase. And then looking at teams that fundraise specifically to cover pay to participate fees, of all of our teams, only 5 do that, and everyone else kind of focuses on a specific item or piece of equipment or things like that, some special extras for their team, spirit wear, things like that they look to cover with fundraised dollars.
So in connection to just that idea of the full scope of, fees that families incur, one of the things that we would really like to do is have a really clear delineation between what is going to be district and program provided as far as materials and equipment go, and then what is going to be, family or maybe booster supported. Because I will say we had some very interesting discussions as we were processing what, is provided and isn't provided. And so, for example, I mentioned earlier that Jennifer really helped us kind of get a full picture by outlining for us, what her expenses looked like for Colton. And so we had conversations about, in baseball specifically, the uniform jersey is provided, but uniform pants is an expense that, our families have to pick up. And certainly throughout our discussion, we recognize that there are some families that would want to purchase that item. They would want to keep those pants at the end of the season. They would, only want their child to have, pants only worn by them. But we really processed, as far as equitability goes, there are certain equipment and material things that we should truly be providing. And so this chart is something that Kat and Jessica and I were able to work through, and just kind of outlining what are those things that, really should be athletically funded. What are those things that might be extras coming from the team account allocations? And then how can the boosters support? And then what might be those additional family funded items? So if you take a look at, the first column, there's an asterisk by, several of them, which would indicate, that families will have the option to purchase those items for their child, to their student athlete to keep, but that every student athlete will have these items provided to them. So that includes the uniform pants and shorts, uniform jerseys and shorts, as well as uniform belts, helmets, and then some of that basic equipment. And we definitely had good conversations. Certainly, Kat, Jessica, chime in if you have other things to add. But we were talking specifically about baseball, and there are some pretty expensive bats out there. And oftentimes some of that equipment is very personal to a student athlete. I know my son plays baseball and he always wanted a big barrel bat, but we weren't investing in that. And so he was borrowing, bats from his friends. And then, in connection to the high school athletics, we discussed that student athletes might still have those personalized equipment items, but at a bare minimum, we should also have some, quality materials to provide for student athletes to use that might not, be able to spend $300 on the big barrel bat and some of the other equipment. Kat, Jessica, do you guys want to add anything? Kat, I know you have some more specifics. I know I was really intrigued by, I think, the cross country or the track shirt discussion.
Yeah, we did visit that. I remember when I was in middle school at South, and I remember filling out that order form to purchase a track shirt that we kept. It's probably somewhere still at my parents' house. But, why don't we have uniforms at the middle school level for everyone like we do at the high school level as a part of a rotation? And just looking at those options, again, our goal is to create an equitable experience for everyone, and having equipment that is necessary for them to compete and perform should be an opportunity for everyone that we can provide.
So certainly, there may be other items. This isn't necessarily an exhaustive list, but we want to make sure that the basic level of equipment and uniform is provided for all student athletes. And so moving across the chart, some of the additional team gear that's desired for all to have. If it's something we want all our athletes to have, then we need to have a mechanism for providing it, as well as coaches' uniforms, and then the pregame jersey or warm up. That was something that came out in Kat's survey. There were some sports where they might have kind of a warm up shirt or jersey that they use for game situations, but that weren't provided. And so, that's something that we need to be able to provide if it's going to be a part of the performance gear. And then boosters then coming in to kind of supplement with extra equipment desired above and beyond, what the athletic department provides. So, if there's a new gun, which is a shooting machine that basketball teams might use, if that's not something that, is in the athletic budget, then that might be something the boosters can kind of support with. And then that family funded column, I mean, gosh, there's so many things. We tried to process, what might be those, so baseball hats is a good example. We talked about that really being a part of the uniform. However, with, the hats being on students' heads and stuff, thought that was something that families might want to be able to, of course, keep and have that be a personal item, along with the footwear. Non-uniform spirit wear would be something that families would optionally be able to provide. And then those last two items we talked specifically about, those things are so personalized also to student athletes. And so in some particular sports, there are some more expensive, equipment items that are family funded. So I'm sure we'll have some more discussion about that chart. Just the other three bullets up there at the top, as far as updates are concerned, I mentioned before, working on a system to enforce the payment requirements, and talking about ways that the athletic directors can collaborate with both the coaches and the boosters to provide guidance around, fundraisers. That's another added expense. So, families are paying their pay to participate. They're paying, additional fees for maybe camps or additional equipment. And then also they're doing fundraisers, which certainly benefit, the student athletes in the program, but we want to make sure we've got some more guidance and structure around those fundraisers, and working collaboratively with the boosters on that. And so not only the number of fundraisers, the types of fundraisers, but also how that fundraiser money is then used. And so back to the pay to participate portion, we have 5 teams that are, utilize booster support or fundraiser support to take care of portions of pay to participate fees, and then all the other sports that don't. And so how can we kind of streamline so that, it's equitable across the board, even if it ends up being a lower amount, but we know, there's support for all student athletes. And then the fourth bullet, just, continuing to analyze where we might be able to make some decreases and adjustments to that overall pay to participate fee for athletics. Whew. So this last slide really just summarizes all the different updates that we talked about throughout the presentation for the various fees. I'm not going to read through all of them again. You can kind of work through them, but in some areas, we've got some elimination of fees. In other areas, we're trying to streamline how district funds are used to try and mitigate some of the additional expenses that families are dealing with. And then in other areas, we really have to work through some more detailed processes to review and validate fee amounts and the need for fees. So at this point, we kind of open it up for questions. Thoughts, comments?
Yeah, thank you. We asked a lot of questions, I think, over the last couple of months relative to fees from questions that we were getting from people in the community. And I think this is really the most comprehensive look that at least I've had that I can remember as to how what the fees are for each type of area and how they're assessed and communicated and things like that. This was very comprehensive. We do have a question first. I'll start with the board, and I was just going to go through each board member. Matt put his name out there first, so I'm going to start with you.
Hey, thanks. I appreciate the work that you guys did. That's very informative, very helpful. I was able to actually cross off a couple of my questions before coming on here. Okay. The fee, going back to, well, first of all, do we know if any student athletes have been held out of competitions because their fee had not posted in time?
Kat, do you want to take that one?
Like their payment?
Right.
No, we haven't. It's pretty inconsistent across the board. We haven't held people out of competition in games because once we realized that we weren't getting real-time reports, it was kind of already a loose process, and it was our goal to kind of work through this with Pam and the treasurer's office to make it better. So no, we're not holding them out.
What is your approach going to be moving forward as far and at the middle school level also for those who have not submitted a payment, whether they need to ask for help and get the fee submitted, or how many student athletes, how are we going to handle student athletes whose parents have not made that payment or facilitated it?
Sure. Yeah, we've been working through that. If we're going to have this policy, our goal is definitely to enforce it and hold people accountable. But on the other side of that, we're out there willing to help families. We've set up payment plans, and Jen has too this year, just working with families to help them out if they are going through some financial hardship. And with the issue that we're having with the real-time reports, I'm going to work with our coaches and the athletic department, myself and Mr. Gilmore. When people do pay, they can somehow attach their receipt or proof of payment. It's not a for sure process yet, but those are the conversations we've had so far. I never want to be in a position to hold a student athlete out. I just think that would be heartbreaking if it's a financial hardship situation that their family is in. And I think we're in a good position to help people out and be patient. But I think our communication up front needs to be better, and we just need to be more consistent across the board.
Matt, you good?
One more comment, and I know that I'm not going to push, I know this is getting into the weeds a little bit, so maybe this is another conversation. School supplies, classroom school supplies. I was waiting for those hidden fees to pop up on this one, but I guess we could save that for a future conversation.
Yeah, no, Matt, that's actually, that's a really good point. I did mean to make that. That's I like how you called it the hidden expenses. So in addition to the instructional fee, families primarily at the lower levels have sometimes these really massive school supply lists. And so I think that that's something A couple years back, I know when Scott Schmidt was in my role, he had worked with building principals on kind of scaling back those lists, even if it doesn't necessarily feel that way. But I think it's time for us in our cycle then to really review those and take a look again at, how can the instructional fee, provide some of those, and then what are the necessaries for families to provide. So I appreciate that question, and we'll be working on reviewing those also.
Appreciate it. That's it for me.
Okay, Daphne, do you have any questions or comments?
I do. Thank you for this very thorough report. And I appreciated the comparison for the athletic pay to participate fees. I'm wondering if there's something similar for the instructional fees.
So there is actually, so I think I'm still sharing my screen. I have a spreadsheet that we use to collect some information like that. And so let me just pull up that tab. It just, we typically make these phone calls to just some of the Central Ohio school districts. And so this is the fees call that we made. Prior to having Kat's really cool chart, we had our pay to participate fees on there. But then also this outlines some of the instructional, oops, scrolled too far. Some of the instructional fees. So you'll see that there are 3 that do not have them and are technically, like this particular one, I don't have this frame freeze. Let me freeze the first column. So it's Bexley has no student fees. Come on. Dublin, none. And then Hilliard recently eliminated them several years ago. And then you can see the other ones kind of, it's not a full scale process or comparison, but this does outline some of the local school districts. So, but we could work on getting more if we want kind of a larger scale comparison.
It's interesting to note that the school districts that have none, maybe with the exception of Bexley, have a very high concentration of commercial property. So their taxes are going to be benefiting from their property tax.
Yeah, that's a really good
benefit.
Very good.
Okay, I was just curious about that. And then just secondly, the My Payment Plus contract, we need to pull that and review it. I mean, having worked in banking for almost 30 years, there's no reason that the processing time frame is as long as it is. They are making so much money by holding our money. And if I just think we need to look at negotiating that contract to our benefit. Number one, for knowledge, for more timely reports, and the turnaround on the because that's exceptionally long.
Yeah, it is for sure. So we can definitely do that, review the contract and work on that.
Thank you for all of the information you provided. The Chinese fees I didn't see, but is that just a different beast?
I think that was on one of the slides specific to the high school. We do have Chinese enrichment here is a little bit more expensive. Tia, do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, and the Chinese enrichment fee actually is associated with the elementary and the middle school programming, and it supports some of the instructional supplies needed for those, as well as workbooks and things as they move into the middle school. At the high school, the fee is not the $70. It goes back into that workbook fee until you get into the AP course. So the $70 fee is for the grades 2 through 7.
Wow.
Okay. Thank you.
That's a big one. And then just the ones that I jotted down the activities that no fees were required. And it was stuck out to me that the Lionettes is not I mean, that almost should be a pay to participate, right? Don't they try out for Lionettes?
So Jessica, correct me if I'm wrong, but Lionettes or Cat, Lionettes is not actually happening right now. Is that correct?
So for the past 2 years, we have been unable to secure a coach. So part of that retention and turnover there. So that Lionettes, we would collect fees. There would be that participation fee if we had a team. So it's just under this subsection because for the past 2 school years, we have not collected a fee because we have not had a team.
Okay, thank you.
Daphne, you good?
I am good, thank you.
All right, Burl?
Sorry, I had to unmute. I just have a comment and an easy, quick question. So my comment is really just a huge thank you because we did ask a lot of questions at the last time that we talked about this, and I think at a couple board meetings in between this meeting and when we last talked about it. And I just want to say thank you. I know that this had to take a lot of time, but I know, at least for me, I really appreciate both the historical context and the context of comparison to other districts. And also, I guess I really appreciate the focus on equity and on the idea of aligning those fees to, I guess, what they're being collected for and what they're being used for. So my overall comment is just a thank you. The one thing I guess that I also want to add to that is the idea of making sure that there is a graduation pathway without fees. I think that that's really important too. So I appreciate seeing that on there. And then the question that I have that I think is pretty easy, when I looked in the shared folder, I didn't see an updated version of the slides. And I just want to make sure that we can get that. Some of the charts were hard to see on the screen. So if you can just make sure that we get the updated slides so I can zoom in.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
No, that's okay.
I will dump it in there for sure.
Okay, thank you. I'm good.
Very good. I guess along those lines, I did get a text from somebody who was on the phone, but has dropped off since. And he asked that this very helpful meeting, key for him was what is pay to play cover. He was only on the phone, so he couldn't see Jill's slides. And so if there's a way to post this presentation as a part of the minutes, then I think that will be helpful too for people who want to understand that more. And I'll be sure to follow up and let them know that that's being done. Again, I want to echo my thanks. Before I have my comment and question, I just want to open it up to anybody who's not a board member that is either on the phone or in the Zoom group chat that didn't register any comments. Any comments from anybody else? And then we also have, I know Principal Barbosa is here, a couple other folks who aren't part of the curriculum team. Any comments that you might have, any questions? No, good. I want to echo my thanks. I think this overall, just the meeting itself has been fantastic. My question is, where do we go from here? Both with athletics, and maybe I have one comment before that because we can maybe use or where do we go from here as a closing. One of the thoughts that came up, and I wish it did when Lorena was still on the phone, but I wonder if there's an opportunity to investigate intramural sports. I know there's some high school rules about those things, and maybe that's just what needs to get communicated to people as to why we don't have those opportunities. But I can't, looking back over the last year, the excitement that was around the fundraiser and the basketball game, the student versus teachers basketball game, and kind of leading up to that, and the teams and the camaraderie that created was so important. And maybe that's something that we should take a look at. And if there's reasons why we can't do it, maybe we should be able to post that and communicate to people so that they understand why a player who might not necessarily in a school with the athletic aptitude that Gahanna does, whether you're a part of a club or not, the reality is you have to have a certain athletic skill in order to make a team. And that's just the unfortunate part of that. And whether you get that from training on your own or in a recreation club, or whether a club environment, you still have to have that athletic ability, and it's competitive, right? And so exploring that opportunity or other ways that kids who have a passion for a sport who might not be able to play in Gahanna because of how competitive it is might be something that we could either address or just at least take a look at. And then the only other, then I'll go back to my question, which is regarding athletics and then also fees. Like what's next? Where do we go here? Do we refer fees to finance committee at some point so that we could review some of the recommendations? Like where do you see as our roadmap and where we're going with both of these discussions?
So specific to fees, I mean, I think I could see it coming to finance at some point for sure. I would like to work through some of those review processes specific to, high school course fees and the clubs and enrichment activities. I'd like to allow Tia and the curriculum team some time to kind of flush out, what's covered in curriculum budget versus what's consumable covered at the schools. So I definitely think that we could, plan to, discuss more of the numbers and the potentials and the impact of decreases or additional eliminations with the finance committee at some point. I don't know when we think that's, that would be the best time to do it. It definitely takes, it takes time to kind of work through some of these processes. So, we can make sure we get it on the agendas, talk about the best place to put it. Thoughts on that, Jennifer?
Can I speak just a little bit? The concept of providing the right uniforms for middle school. I know my kids wore tattered, threadbare, leftover, used high school uniforms when they were at middle school. And so you had made a comment that needs to be something, I guess, from the perspective of budgeting and finance, we also need to understand what would it take to run a class A or class, athletic program at all levels. Because I got to think these ADs are using Band-Aids to put things together and really skimping everywhere possible at this point. And now we're asking them to provide uniform pants. Well, they haven't had to do that before, right? Mm-hmm. Softball, we bought them for my daughter in high school softball. So if we're going to be adding to their lists, I think we need to understand what those numbers are.
Yeah. And we did talk a little bit about, this was conversation Kat, Jessica, and I had about, before we go out and just buy a full team worth of baseball pants, like we said, we know some families are going to want to still purchase their own. And so that's going to take some time to kind of process the need there as well and take a look at those expenses. We also have, when pay to participate fees come in at this point in time, it's kind of split 50-50. 50% of it goes to the general fund for salaries and benefits and things like that. And then we've got 50% that actually go to the athletic fund. So I think we need to take a hard look at that also and understand, how much do the salaries and benefits cost the district, and, then be mindful of what that split might need to continue looking like, or how it might need to shift so that we can do all the things we want to do for the programming. And I like what you said about what does it take to run a top class program. I think
love that. I love that.
Yeah, that's one of the things I really appreciate about our board is, really wanting to process what we need to provide the best for our kids. And so I love that question.
It was always fascinating to me that my kids that went to Middle School West, they had to go back to school and change into their gate closed because they weren't allowed to bring their uniforms home. I don't think that was consistent across all 3 middle schools. So, you know, even silly, simple policies like that, you didn't have the uniforms that you had to go chasing down. There was the benefit of that, I guess. But I think it just speaks to how we approach the students and teaching responsibility.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that comment too, because I like the quote that you wrote down from Daphne. I also like the fact that, again, we're not looking at things piecemeal, but we're looking at things holistically. And if we want to have an excellent athletic program, which we do, but imagine how much more quality we can give to our students and our families if we're looking at the budget and what we're able to provide in a little bit more holistic way. And those are some, you know, after looking at the video that Kat showed in the beginning, that's one of our fiscal responsibilities, is that, you know, every kid comes first, and the opportunity to, I think, provide a holistic experience for them and their families is something that we should definitely take a look at. Any other comments or questions? I think we definitely have to put this back on, you know, kind of one of the running lists we have of things we need to revisit, and whether the fees and the discussion about budget for the athletic department, which I think is what we're kind of saying we would like to see, goes to finance committee, or whether it goes to back to SLA, we can make that determination moving forward. But it definitely sounds like that's something that the board is asking for. And then just further consideration with respect to some of the other fees that you're taking a look at with respect to some of the questions that Matt had. And maybe you can follow up with us and let us know the timing of when those can come back to whatever committee is appropriate in order to discuss them.
Sure.
So I just want to thank Jill and the Treasurer's Office for such a comprehensive look at fees. Honestly, it's a great springboard for a discussion so that we can look at things in a purposeful way, maybe take some burden off parents, but also kind of contextualizing it in what is coaching cost, what are transportation costs for athletics. All of that goes into creating, you know, a world-class program. And so I think this is a great place to kind of begin to kind of look at that. And I think finance will be a good place. $3 million over a 5-year forecast is interesting. It'd be interesting to see the transportation costs over a 5-year forecast, the coaching costs over a 5-year forecast. And then how do we kind of look at things? Because I think there is a lot of burden. Enlightening was the slide with all the hidden fees that people are paying that sometimes we forget they're paying. And so kudos to Jill and for all the research and hard work, and Mike and Michelle and the Treasurer's Office for helping with all that data. And I know Mari made a lot of phone calls as well. So very, very good, comprehensive job. So thank you.
Yeah, it was excellent. I appreciate it. Well, that ends our agenda items for this evening. I want to thank everybody for taking the time to come and participate. Just anecdotally, before we actually started the meeting and everybody was logging on, my daughter is in 7th grade, heard her principal's voice on the phone, and I could hear her coming through the front door, and she was like, "Is that Mr. Barboza? Is that Mr. Barboza?" And then when Kat was giving her presentation, my 9th grader who played football for Gahanna and then made the baseball team and unfortunately didn't get to play, he heard Kat's voice and he comes running around the corner and he said, "Is that Miss Harris?" And I said, "It is." And he was like, "Oh my gosh, it's so good to see her. She's so great." And so just the importance, I think, of these virtual meetings and all of you taking the time, even if you don't have specific agenda items to discuss, like, I can't tell you what that means to all of us as board members, but also the time that you're taking during this really strange environment to reach out and connect with students. I had 2 examples tonight of voices that they heard that were familiar, that put smiles on both of their faces. So thank you for all that you're doing. And it sounds like this is a really good start to these discussions. We can't drop the ball with them. We have to keep these discussions moving. And it would be a shame to do all this work and all this data and let it go to waste. So we'll get the ball rolling and get these things moving. So with that, it is 9 o'clock exactly according to my computer. And we're going to go ahead and adjourn this meeting, and we'll see you all soon. Oh, policy is on Thursday. So hopefully we'll get such a good showing for that as well. Huh, Matt?
Yeah.
It won't be this long.
These are always the longest, but the best.
That's right. Yes, I know.
That's right. Great. Thank you, everybody. Have a good night.
Everyone. Good night.
Thank you. Good night.
Bye, Jeff.